Ian Trottier here for Discussions of Truth. 2016 is when I started the agreement with Wynwood Radio, Miami, Florida. Folks, these hats, these Trottier truckers, as I refer them to, freedom fighter hats, these babies are hot, hot, hot. I send like 10 or 12 of them out in the mail every day. Not to mention the folks at the coffee shop, wherever it may be, that want one of these hats. These hats are dynamite. They're $30 on my website. They're $50 for the signed version. If you DM me, if you send me a direct message to my Instagram, I will send you one out, signed, $50 value. Folks, I hand stitch these patches onto the hat. I hand stitch them. Right now, I am hand stitching these patches onto the hat. I was just in an embroidery shop today. She says, "Do you have iron on?" I says, "No, I will not iron patches onto these hats or anything. I'll never use iron on." She says, "Well, how did you get this on here?" I says, "I hand stitched it." It blew her mind. People cannot believe these patches are hand stitched on. And in fact, I was talking to a friend in Florida today. Literally used the word, "I will cherish this." I hand stitch these patches onto these hats, folks. It takes me time, but I'm getting good at it. I want people to love these hats. I want people to love these hats, and that's exactly what's happening. So if you DM me, $50 value, I pay for the shipping. I will sign the hat for you. I will send it to you. I pay for the shipping. I pay for the hat. I know it's nuts. It's a deal. Right now, it's a deal, and I'll probably keep it that way as these hats continue to fly out of the door. That's just my deal. That's my way of showing my appreciation for you listening to my research, for you listening to my work, and I'm in my 7th year of doing this. So get a Trottier trucker hat, get a freedom fighting hat, wear it proudly. You can buy it on the website. You can make a donation. That's not what I'm after. I don't do this for money, obviously. I do this to take down the deep state. I do this to make America great as it was meant to be. And I do this for you. So pass the message forward. We work together. We're in this together. I don't see party lines. Both major parties are corrupt. That's just the way it is. Look at the research. What is not corrupt is the United States Constitution. And that must unify Americans, bring parties together of all parties, Green Party, Independent Party, whatever it may be. We must be unified under that Constitution, because there's really no more liberating document on the face of a planet ever created by man. Ever. Bringing on right now a freedom fighter in own right. We're going to talk a very difficult subject today. Yesterday I watched the movie Sound of Freedom, Jim Caviezel, based on the story of Tim Ballard. Go watch it. Take some friends. That's a very difficult movie to watch. So we're going to get a little deeper today into this child issue that's going on, child trafficking issue. We're going to bring on Meghan Walsh. So thanks for tuning in to Discussion of Truth. I'm Ian Trottier. Bring on Meghan right now.
Hello.
Meghan, welcome to Discussions of Truth. I'm Ian Trottier. It's nice meeting you, Meghan.
Hi, Ian. Nice to meet you. Thanks for having me.
Well, it's my pleasure. I started this podcast back in Miami in 2016, and Meghan, what's happened to the country? Well, you know what? Items of truth just come forward, and they press forward. They sift through all the smoke and the smoke and screening and mirrors, and people like you are keeping America what it is. For listeners who aren't familiar with who you are and what you do, Meghan, take a moment to please introduce yourself.
Yeah, thank you, Ian. And thank you again for having me. I hope everyone had a great weekend. And, you're absolutely right. And I think that we're moving to a good space. I think there's been a lot of hard work done over these past years, along with a lot of the hardships. And for me, nothing is really black and white as we're seeing. And really, it's a lot, what I focus on is narrative versus truth. And we're seeing that as you touched on, which is why I bring it up. But for those of you who aren't aware of who I am, my name is Meghan Walsh. I am a national children's rights advocate, as well as a whistleblower, if you will, regarding our domestic child trafficking via our own government, utilizing CPS, or Child Protective Services, some places known as DCF, and other alphabet letters, as we say. So I started speaking out. I was born into politics and media and pop culture, with my father being John Walsh. He was the host of a show known called America's Most Wanted. And I grew up kind of, well, not kind of, obviously, in that shadow of my brother, for those who are also not aware, being Adam Walsh, who was the little boy with the baseball bat who was kidnapped in 1981 from the Sears department store in Hollywood, Florida. And that really set the tone for a huge, moral panic, a huge panic over how we raise our children. How children grew up, from riding our bicycles down the street to no longer being able to do that, and what it's done since then for over 40 years. I started speaking out, and which brings us to present day. And what I do now is speak about, how actually CPS is child trafficking, how it's done through our government, through Title IV, Obamacare, and the different ways that it's happening, as well as how do we identify who our modern predators are, our modern day child predators. And what positions would they hold? And what does child trafficking in America look like these days? We know about it, in foreign situations and applications, but what does it look like here in America, and so on and so forth. So that's a little gist of what I do, and what my background is.
So, Meghan, I was unfamiliar with your brother. Your brother, it was older, younger. He was kidnapped. What happened there?
Yes, I wasn't born yet. I was actually born less than a year after he was kidnapped. He was 6.5 years old, and my mother went to the Sears department store in Hollywood, Florida, which was actually across the street from the Hollywood Police Department. And she left him at the video game section in the children's department, where there were other children playing an Atari video game, while she went to search for a lamp. And upon her return, Adam had disappeared. And we find out that a security guard, the narrative goes that a security guard had been, summoned over because the boys had gotten in a little argument over the game. And the security guard actually sent the boys out different exits and told them to go find their parents, where then Adam exited out and was allegedly picked up from the side of the mall. He was, they searched for him through Florida, and my parents went on national headlines and morning shows, regarding his disappearance. And 14 days later, his remains were actually found. And there's a lot of controversy over that, not to be graphic, but it was actually his head that was found. His body and his other remains were never found, and they were found north of the location that he was taken from in Florida. And that kind of put a big outreach, which then created the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, the International Center, and then going into America's Most Wanted and things that my father's known for.
So, Meghan, I'm very familiar with the show that your father's done. I don't think he still does it. You can clarify. But the reason that show came into existence in reality is because of your brother being abducted and murdered. Is that right?
It is. That was part of it. My father, it is no longer on the air. He's since done The Hunt with John Walsh, and In Pursuit with John Walsh was his latest on Discovery. I don't think it's been renewed yet for a new season, but he did start lobbying for legislation. I was born, being held weeks later by Ronald Reagan in the Rose Garden, and my father was definitely on Capitol Hill with my mother, lobbying for legislation in terms of victims and children's rights and things that, have the registries and databases in place that we have today. And so then, America's Most Wanted came about. Actually, it was Rupert Murdoch. A little history that people will find if they look into it. Rupert Murdoch, the owner of Fox, which was the network that America's Most Wanted was originally on. There was a show in the UK called Crime Watch UK. It had a female host, and it was the same, playbook, the same production as America's Most Wanted. And he really wanted to bring it to America. Fox was actually a fledgling network at the time, almost about to go under, and they actually asked two other hosts before my father to host the show. They were turned down, and then my father accepted the position.
Now, you're talking about Child Protective Services, and again, I just want to keep things basic for listeners that aren't familiar with what this is and the work that you're doing. But what you're doing is very brave and very bold. Tell again on a very basic level here, and you touched on the surface here, but tell listeners exactly what's going on in your understanding and your research with the Child Protective Services. What's happening in this country with that program?
Absolutely, Ian, and thank you for that. Again, as I did touch on just a moment ago, we're all very well aware of what international child trafficking looks like, what it might look like in Bangkok or Africa or India, or even Mexico. But we are in America. We do have a domestic child trafficking issue. We have countless children that go missing each year. We have statistics that the National Center and the FBI actually put out themselves, stating that approximately, if not over 88% of child trafficking is coming from the foster care system itself. We have a border crisis where children are being drugged and brought across the border by traffickers who then get work visas, and the children are put in the system. They apply through their work visa to take in children, and they get the product back. It doesn't matter if they get the same children. Why that's happening, people need to ask, is that they know that our system in America, that America already has a well-oiled machine that is done in plain sight with our taxpayer dollars. It's been put through legislation through the Clintons and Obama and Bush and even Reagan. And we need to be looking at really what adoption is, what Child Protective Services is. We're seeing a lot of these federal agencies weaponized against the people. And CPS, behind closed doors, because of the nature of the way the system is set up with kangaroo courts and gag orders and retaliation, there's absolutely no due process. The Constitution does not matter. And the courts and GALs and the prosecuting attorneys for these states across this nation are taking our children from loving families, as well as through the family court system. Our children are now being handed to abusers and pedophiles for money and with our money. So this is a very real, very, very, very real situation that we need to start realizing and waking up. It is very hard, but we have to start saying, what does American child trafficking look like, and how is it happening? Because once we can all do that and come together, we actually put an end to CPS, and we then, if 88%, Ian, I'm not great at math, I always say, but if we have already an 88% there of child trafficking coming from the foster care system, if we end that and we speak up to protect our children truly and really just look at better ways that we can, what have we been allowing for this long? Is what they say happening really happening? Where's the oversight? Where's the accountability? And why do these people have such high immunity? As well as why are businesses, not the government, running these things? And that goes into nonprofits as well. So that's the work that I do, is bringing awareness, as well as podcasts online and my merchandise and things like that, to really be giving ways that people with a tough subject can really make a conversation and really start talking about it and start looking into it in your own communities. This is nationwide and it's a system. So we have to understand how it's happening in our communities.
So, Megan, yesterday I watched the Tim Ballard story in form of the Jim Caviezel, a character that played Ballard in Sound of Freedom. Me personally, I don't spend a whole lot of time looking at this, but at the end of the movie, which I recommend everybody go out and watch and see, this is an incredible story to understand. At the end of the movie, they made a strong emphasis on the fact that this is slavery. These children are being submitted into slavery, which far exceeds what is considered by Americans as this transatlantic slavery. I'm not justifying anything by any means, except for the fact that the data is there that this disgusting practice of child slavery is happening. Megan,
Absolutely.
With your understanding of child protection services, what happened under the Clintons was Adoption and Safe Families Act, ASFA. Maybe you want to speak to that a little bit. But what is there a cover up happening right now in the U.S. federal government?
Well, you know what, Ian? I encourage people to look on YouTube, BitChute, and Rumble, as well as many other advocates across this country. Rescue the Fosters is a great nonprofit speaking out to get the information regarding ASFA, Title IV, Obamacare, and the literal ways that it is working through the system and the government. Increased statistics, we know, increases funding, and that's really how this beast has started. In terms of Sound of Freedom, I'm absolutely, I'm really happy that this has come out. I have to say that in a very heartfelt way. But I also say it, to bring up two sides of a coin. Again, I started with not everything is black and white. We have well been shown how this is happening, internationally and even across our borders. But what we really need to understand, and if people look into the case, that the Buchanan case actually that this movie was based off of, it actually does disclose, whether are children kidnapped and, or are they groomed and then trafficked around? We have to be looking at the definitions, what we're calling searches versus raids, these different words that we're using. Is this really what's going on in these cases? And in the Buchanan case, it actually is a wonderful depiction. I mean, it's horrific in nature, but it's a wonderful depiction of how in America, through family, through communities, through organizations, through schools, through churches, children are being groomed, and then they are trafficked throughout their communities or through the system via adoption or foster care or what have you, that again, many of us go into great detail and please look further into. But we have to understand that our system is providing the children. It is we are the largest consumers of child pornography. The National Center for Missing and Exploited Children has the world's largest database of child pornography, and who has oversight to that and who has access to that. We need to look at who's donating to these things, who's lobbying for this legislation that is, controlling our parental rights, our civil rights, and every other right under the sun, which is being violated by, on these parents, and families are being terrorized through this system. And we are not thinking about what the children are being put through here in America. So I'm actually glad that it'll be bringing up both aspects, but my wheelhouse is domestic child trafficking. I care about our American families and children, and I can't wait till we can really get this out, as tough as it is, so that we can be bringing home a lot of babies. There's so many people that are doing such great work across this country, and I really encourage everyone to please look deeper into it, make up your own minds, ask the questions, get involved in your community, and talk about it. The least you can do is share on your platforms.
Meghan, talk about some of the successes that you've had in the years and the energy and commitment that you've made to to this, to helping these kids. Tell listeners about some of these successes, maybe laws that you've passed or legislation, some of the successes for listeners to look into.
Well, Ian, thank you for that. And I hope in the future that I'll be able to say a lot more. We have some projects going on that involve legislation, as well as not just legislation, Ian. Do you see the politicians talking about domestic child trafficking? Do you want more of the federalized control over our families and our children? So this is something why I kind of divert from that is that because I have many people know my story, know that I've been fighting for the last 2 years since being an advocate prior to the past 2 years, since my children have been taken from me. Again, my father, John Walsh, and that's a big thing that is also happening. If your neighbor does not agree with you or doesn't like you, they can call CPS and they can make a report, and families' lives are changed forever, and your children are taken and sold through adoption or foster care, and trafficked in the meantime. So 2 years ago, I started my fight to gain back my 4 children now, and again, there's plenty of information about that really I talk about my story, and I haven't in a while because I want the focus to be on the American families and children that this is happening to every second, even while we talk about this now. So I am asking for people to come forward. We're asking for whistleblowers to come forward. We are getting groups together so that each community can have access to make the changes necessary within them. I've been speaking out. We've seen great response. The crowds and the amount of people just finding out and realizing what this is has been, it's just skyrocketed, and every day it keeps growing and growing, and this is what we need to unite. I'm really over the dividing stuff, with all due respect, and this is our children. Our children are being trafficked and put in strangers' homes with our money instead of supporting our families. If there's hardships, everyone has something that we struggle with. Everyone has ups and downs and hard times in life, especially when raising children. So for me, it's about better ways and within our communities to support with funding, services for the families, so that the main environment for the children or the child is, made better if there's a deficiency, or that can be strengthened, instead of taking, each other's children and passing them around and raising them subjectively as where the system is at currently, unfortunately. So, we need everyone to join. Please come and join me on Twitter, Meghan Walsh _. I'll be releasing a Substack soon called The Pedo Files. We'll be going over historic, issues regarding child predators and children's rights throughout history, politics, and pop culture. So we're looking forward to putting that together. But, I am focused on, spreading the information, educating people, and bringing groups together so that we can really stand up for our children.
Okay, Meg, I have to apologize. I thought you were doing your work for your brother. You're doing your work for your own children. You just blew me away. You had your kids taken from you?
Yes, Ian, I was an advocate. I'd been doing bridge walks and getting involved in my community, and started speaking out about CPS and child trafficking and asking questions. That's when I started looking into my brother's case. So I've been hard at work, yes, reviewing my brother's case files, fighting for my children once I started speaking up, and also advocating, which, humbly, Ian, I thought that my father would be proud of that. I thought that addressing anything that is harming children, would be something that would make him proud, as well as the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. And in return, all I can say right now is that I was, falsely accused, and my children, my home, and more. I'll just say that has happened for the last 2 years. We've been terrorized, with my father weaponizing the system, and keeping my children from me. I haven't seen 3 of my children in a year.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you can identify with what Meghan is experiencing on either one of those major levels or any of her levels, please get involved. Meghan, thanks for taking your time to join the program. Please direct listeners to your website or how they can get involved in fighting with and for you.
Yeah, thank you, Ian. Thank you so much for having me. I can't thank you enough, and I really think that it's important information for everyone to have. Again, there's a lot of others on Twitter talking about this, a lot on all of the platforms. If you just look up CPS corruption, family court corruption, even on Facebook. But you can find me mainly on Twitter right now. I have a link tree up to my merchandise and podcasts and things like that. But you can find me on Twitter at Meghan Walsh, MEGHANWALSH _. You can follow me over there. Please share everything and check out who I retweet and who comments. We've got a great group over there, and it's growing. As well, again, as my link tree. And also, if you want to support, obviously, I have big legal fees, and I will be taking my case, as high as we need to go, because my case actually does endanger, that's for another time, Ian, but it does endanger every American family and child, making it more subjective for our children to essentially be removed on anything that they deem that they should remove our children on. So I really need people to come together, to put it lightly. But if you want to contribute and donate, please, my PayPal is familyfarmandfaith@gmail.com. Family, farm, and spelled out AND, faith, FAITH @gmail.com. And that's again PayPal, or please just most of all prayers and reaching out to us and really getting involved in your community. Ask those questions and, let's stand up together for our children. I can't thank you enough, Ian.
Ladies and gentlemen, Meghan Walsh. Meghan, I look forward to re-hosting you on Discuss Your Truth and keeping track of the fight that you're experiencing, your battle. Meghan, until next time, thank you very much.
Thank you, Ian. God bless you.
Wow. Okay, Meghan Walsh just blew my mind. Ladies and gentlemen, this is not where I thought this conversation was going to head. This hit home as soon as she said, "Now look, that her children have been taken from her. Look, there is something very wrong happening in the American government on various levels. But as I preluded before bringing Meghan onto the episode, and as I was talking to someone earlier about this afternoon, the more this country divides, the weaker it gets. There is much prudence in the word united. So how and where do you see a bipartisan relationship? Through the backbone of the Constitution. Everybody's got children. In fact, if you're in a gay marriage, you may have children. They might not be yours biologically, but you are very possibly better parents to those kids than the people that biologically brought them into the world. Which means you need to rear those children properly. And their extended family, folks, is their citizenry. Their extended family is the United States. Let me give you an example. If you have ever traveled foreignly, if you've ever traveled internationally, and you return back home to America, there's a sense of pride. Hopefully you experience that. But at least in me and people I've spoken to, there is a sense of pride of being an American and a sense of awe, like a gratification of returning back home. regardless of your political stance. Whether you identify as being conservative, whether you identify as being liberal, whether you identify as being independent, whatever it may be. First and foremost, identify as being an American. Embrace the Constitution that has made this country great. Regardless of your sexual orientation, regardless of however you identify, unify under that Constitution. And as Meghan is alluding to, unify under the fact that you, if you are a parent and you have a child. Clearly, this is a woman who is a fighter. You see what her father developed after losing his son? Sounds like he basically created that show, even though there was a show of that format in the UK, and then Fox created an American version, and he slid into being the host, but he was kind of already on that track. America's Most Wanted, who killed his son. But this is clearly a woman. It seems that they're definitely at odds, whatever reason. Didn't get into that with her this time. If there's another opportunity for it, perhaps I will. But clearly this woman is a warrior. She blew my mind. I had no idea that her personal children had been taken from her. Now, over a year ago, I was in Texas. I ordered an Uber from the airport to the location I was going to, downtown. And the driver was interested in the work that I was doing. Again, I started the show, the podcast, Discussions of Truth. Incepted, was established formally in 2016. Did my first show the first couple days, January of 2017. Miriam Henning was the first guest on the show. People like Dr. Tenpenny, Judy Mikovits, followed within the first year. They were some of my early guests. This was all a result of the Zika virus happening in Miami Beach. That's why I do the show. Someone asked me to do the podcast. Okay? This isn't me saying, oh, you know what? I want to start a podcast show. No. No. I was doing completely other things with my time. Someone asked me, because of the research that I did behind the Zika virus, her name was Kitty. She was one of the managers of Wynwood Radio. She asked me to come into the studio and talk about the research that I was doing behind the Zika virus. And then I started talking about vaccine mandates. This is, again, back in 2017. 2016 was doing the research, was making these connections. I have concentrated and given everything I've got to the podcast because of the information. The information must get out there. You now look at right-wing TV, if you will, mainstream conservatism, so-called Fox News, and you look at Tucker Carlson being released from his position, which is kind of mind-boggling, because if you go back 2 years ago, year and a half ago, he was the biggest name in the conservative movement. He was let go. Because why? Because he was digging too deep, evidently. What I'm getting at is war machines that have been around for centuries, that predate the existence of the United States, because these war machines do still exist. And they want to take down America. Make no mistake about it. America has a massive military. Really, nobody's wanting to confront it. I wouldn't either. Don't blame them. But outside of that military, this country would be squashed and overrun. It's become weak. It's become weak because it's not united. It's becoming divided. And I completely and fully support what Meghan just said. Look, the wise war machine, if you will, knows that if it can divide, it can conquer. And that is why mainstream media, Ray McGovern, that is why mainstream media in the United States divides. It politically enforces that division in America. It wants to pit you against your neighbor. The mainstream media. Sure, it makes them a ton of money. But ultimately, if you follow the money, it's being controlled by what's so-called the deep state. Deep state has a global agenda. Read my article, iantrottier.com. Let's see, what do I call it? It's the title of the article is, read this up to you right now. Okay, national suicide is one you should be reading. But central bank, a global communist conspiracy. I don't say theory. I clearly write conspiracy. No theory in that. So please read some of this information that I've written for you, that I've collected, that I've spent 6+ years organizing and writing for you. Your country needs you. And to enforce what Meghan just said, the country needs you united. So unite under the fact that you want your kids to be safe. You want your kids to live a healthy, productive, safe life. Agree to disagree if you must, America. All right, so we thank Meghan Walsh for joining the show. Please and get involved if that's something that resonates with you and that's something you feel that you can contribute to. Please support her and get involved with her. Like I said, I was invited. Even the book that I wrote, Federal Freedom Reserve, No More Lies. Someone asked me to write that. Former guest on my show, he's been on my show a few times, Mark Shaw, lawyer out of California. He asked me, suggested, he recommended that I write the book, and I did. So waiting for trying day to publish that. I've got the agreement standing by. Just had somebody, thanks to a close friend, just had somebody pre-order that today. Had somebody 2 days ago wanting a copy of it, signed copy of it. Old news is new news, right? In that regard. That's why these mechanics are attacking our history, taking down our statues, because the more they can wipe out your ability to understand from the past or learn from the past, better off they are with their narrative, which again is to conquer, to divide America and conquer it. So, folks, the Trottier Trucker hat, if you DM me, they're available for purchase on my website. But if you DM me on Instagram, I can ship it to a neutral FedEx location. I don't need your address per se. I don't want your address. I don't care where you live. Okay, but I want people out there that support what I'm doing to have a bit of me and who I am, right? And me and who I am is disclosing and educating folks on what the deep state is, right? And I get into the economic, financial mechanics of the workings behind the deep state. And it's a very real thing. It's a very, very, very real thing. I don't get into religion. And I really haven't spent a whole lot of time on the child trafficking thing, but I want people, I hand stitch these patches onto the hats. So if you DM me on Instagram, I'll send you an autographed hat. And I'll tell you what, man, these autographed hats, these are taking off. People love them. They want them autographed. They want me to autograph the hats. Yeah, I don't know why. They want me to autograph the hats. So I'm happy to autograph the hat. Anyway, just DM me on Instagram. Deepstate.movie. That'll take you to a landing page on my website that directs you to an interview I had with Jordan Maxwell. Rest in peace. Jordan passed away last year. But Jordan Maxwell has been talking about the corruption in Hollywood and the deep state mechanics behind the United States government. He was speaking about it for decades. I was fortunate enough to interview him January 2nd, 2020 from a location in Canada. So please check out that interview. And happy 4th of July. Mind you, the United States does not have a financial independence. It has a military and geographic independence, but with a $30 trillion and rapidly counting federal debt. The United States federal government is enslaved. It itself is a slave. It's an economic slave to the central banking system, which roots out of Switzerland. So very important to know as you celebrate this country's independence. It's only a partial independence. It's only a independence defined. It's not a complete independence. It is subservient to basically the Swiss banks, but a closer link would be the City of London. And this is all, you just have to do the research, but you find out that it's a fact. It's all factual. No theories here, folks. And lastly, ladies and gentlemen, I have spent years creating a library of research books. These are all available through WorldCat and archive.org without fee most times. Just you can access them. But I've compiled a library, if you will, on my website of all these links to these books. Primarily, most of the collection I can find on Anthony Sutton, talking about the corruption behind the Federal Reserve Bank. Please go to that research section. I don't charge for it. So this was a tough episode, ladies and gentlemen, only because I know the work that Meghan does is coming from a position of a mother, very, very difficult. I can't even begin to imagine the pain, the frustration, the anger, whatever, all of these different feelings that she's experiencing. I can't even begin. And she was born into a very difficult situation. She's lived her entire life knowing that she was living without a brother that she could have been enjoying, that her parents had lost their child. The movie seen yesterday, Sound of Freedom, the Tim Ballard story, or the Buchanan, I think the case was Buchanan, is what Meghan referred to it as. Maybe I've got that wrong. Homeland Security. That is a very difficult movie to watch because I can't fathom that happening. So I thank Meghan for doing the work that she does, and I think anyone else out there fighting for the freedom of these children. If you go to, I think it's Angel, it might be angel.com, but it's definitely, the production company is called Angel. If you Google that, what they're offering you is a chance, of course, to purchase tickets for your friends and family online. Very easy. Just show up to the theater with a barcode, is what happened yesterday. Paying forward that information. I have not met Tim Ballard. I don't know Jim Caviezel. I don't know any of these people that are involved. Mira Sorvino. I don't know any of these people that are involved. But my understanding is that that was an incredibly difficult process to get that movie to the big screen. Very difficult. A lot of road hurdles for those folks, as I'm sure Meghan is reeling with in her day-to-day. So the woman that I'd met in Texas had lost her children to this child protection services. There's something very, very wrong going on in America. And a lot of people align it to what happened, what's happening, or what happened in Nazi Germany. I mean, again, I'm going to state, I can't imagine having that happen to me and my family. Okay? If I had children. I don't have children. I may at one point, I don't know. But there would be hell to pay, ladies and gentlemen, if that ever happened to one of my kids. As I suspect is the exact life and existence that Meghan is experiencing in hers, and the countless other people that have brought children into the world, into their lives, and it has happened to them. So unite for the kids, if nothing else. This has been a little sobering and sombering, and I appreciate you listening. This has been yet another edition of Discussions of Truth. And by the way, I've got some great shirts being made up. I thank you for your support. Please pass the episode forward. And remember, when Independence Day rolls around next year, if you experience it, every day is a gift, that this beautiful, wonderful country that we love, at least I love, is only independent based on the geographic definition. It is not financially independent. It is in a massive debt, folks. It's struggling to breathe. So write your congressperson now. Until next time, until next week, thanks for listening again. And this is Ian Trottier for Discussions of Truth. Be awesome.